The main emphasis is to talk about goiter. Number two, the classification of goiter. Number three, the approach to a thyroid swelling, which is equal to a goiter. And after that, we will be talking solitary thyroid nodule, multinodular goiter. Particularly, both of them have come as a long question, and there are lots of MCQs in both of these topics. So this is the benign class thyroid 1. Remember that the class on toxic goiter or thyrotoxicosis is a separate class. We will not be talking anything on thyrotoxicosis today. So we will try to restrict ourselves by these topics. Before I start, is the screen visible to all?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Good.
sir.
Right. So let us start with the first one. What is exactly a goiter? Okay. Before I start, I should say that the last around 15 to 20 minutes, that means at the end of the class, before we end, what I have done is that every class from now onwards, you will either have some clinical videos like you had in the last class, or you will have clinical images as an MCQ point, or you will have instruments related to the chapter to be discussed, or technically enough, because in your new pattern of your exams, particularly your new pattern of your MBBS, more importantly, your NEET and something called the next that is going to come. These things called videos and images are going to be in a big way. Okay, so please remember that. So we are going to talk about this gross modalities to remember. Okay, so have I made you understand up to this? Right. Now let us start. Am I visible? Am I audible?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Good. To start with, as I have said, definition. ওকে, শ্যামলদা যখন ব্রেক হবে তখন তার আগে বলে দেবে আমায়। Okay. Now, when you start with definition of goiter, remember that goiter is defined as a swelling oblique a enlargement of the thyroid gland. So have you written this part of the definition?
Yes.
Hello, have you written this
Yes,
part
sir.
of the definition?
Yes, sir.
Good. So if you have written this part of the definition, then the next part is, that means in a normal human being, the anatomical landmarks that are usually present will be the thyroid cartilage that is always visible in all human beings, the rings of the trachea are visible. Particularly remember that in a normal human being, it is
Sir.
usually the,
Ask them to mute themselves.
okay, kindly mute them, sir. Kindly mute, because there is a lot of parallel sound. Okay, so thyroid cartilages are visible in a normal adult. The rings of the trachea are visible, particularly the fourth and the fifth ring of the trachea is visible in a normal adult. The sternocleidomastoid is always an important landmark, as you will see that very soon. And we'll talk about fourth and the fifth ring, which is visible. So if this is the normal anatomical landmark that all human beings are known to have, then what is the next point of concern is, what is exactly a goiter? As I have said, if you have written the definition, a goiter is a swelling or an enlargement of the thyroid gland. So that means any pathology or physiology, either this or both the lobes which if enlarged, remember that this is all about what is exactly a goiter. That means it has to be an enlargement of either a part of the lobe or it is a whole of a lobe that is enlarged. So that is what is important in a goiter. Now, how do we classify goiter? And then we talk about the clinical points about a goiter. How do we classify a goiter? As I have said, the first and the most important things to remember in this is goiter can be broadly classified as physiological and as pathological. Okay, so that means it can be classified as physiological or as pathological. Have you written up till this?
Yes.
Hello? Okay.
Yes.
So if you have written up till this, then the next and the most important point thereafter that comes is what will be the physiological causes in which the thyroid gland can enlarge, or what are the physiological causes of having a goiter. Sir, physiological causes could be divided again into usually two causes. One is something called adolescence. One is something called adolescence, and another one is something in pregnancy. So adolescence and pregnancy. So if it is adolescence, remember that in both these situations of adolescence and pregnancy, a few common points to remember. Number one, this is a reversible state. That means when the boy or the girl becomes into an adult or the pregnancy is complete, the goiter will regress. That means if you get an 18-year-old who has a goiter and that goiter is said to be euthyroid. What does the word euthyroid mean? That means the levels of T3, T4 and TSH are said to be normal in the blood or the circulation. So what is euthyroid? That means it is normal in circulation. The surface of the gland is usually smooth. The surface of the gland is usually smooth. Please remember that. Okay. And no cancer potential. Please understand 4 points. So all of them are important for an MCQ reason, since this box. Why does this happen? This happens because there is increased iodine requirement in physiology. Okay, right. So this is the reason we get a physiological goiter. And if you are thinking, why do you need a physiological goiter? Again, so remember that when you were in school days, this is a tadpole and a tadpole became a frog. Okay. And then by some beautiful operation, we did a thyroidectomy on the tadpole. I do not know how could people do that. And then we landed up with a dinosaur looking tadpole maybe. Okay. So this is this tadpole. Why does it happen? Because iodine is something that is an anabolic hormone. Remember, iodine is an anabolic hormone, or the T3, T4 is technically an anabolic hormone, and you require this for formation of body tissues, and hence in pregnancy also you require this. Hence, now tell me, if the pregnant mother does not get iodine, if the pregnant mother does not get dietary iodine, what is the status of the baby? If the pregnant mother does not get dietary iodine, what happens to the baby? The baby develops a condition called as cretinism, something that you are taught in physiology, community medicine, pediatrics, and they sometimes give a long question, is something called, neonatal hypothyroidism. Nowadays, it is much less seen because the dietary salts are fortified with iodide. So, have you written up till this? Can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, this is physiological. Okay. So, can I proceed, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Good. Let us now come to pathological. Now, pathological means these are all disease conditions or are either a group of problems called disorder, which means a spectrum of a pathology which may not require an active intervention. So I'm not teaching community medicine. Let me come to the pathological causes of a goiter. Now, when I talk about the pathological causes of a goiter, I will always quote the Bailey-Love definitions and the pathological causes of a thyroid gland enlargement. What are the pathological causes of a goiter? Now let us talk about this one. Pathological causes of a goiter could be divided as number one, degenerative. Degenerative is also commonly called as metabolic. And in this group, the problem is with iodine deficiency. Either it could be an absolute deficiency, example being diet that is deficient in iodine, and it could be a relative deficiency, example being diet that contains something called goitrogens. I think this is something that you have been taught in pharmacology. What are goitrogen? What are goitrogens? Goitrogens are those group of drugs or chemical. What are goitrogens? Goitrogens are those group of drugs or chemicals which can produce a goiter. Very simple definition. What is a goitrogen? Drug and chemical that can produce a goiter. It can be either present in the diet, example being in cabbage, banda coffee or band gobi, okay, or other vegetables of this family, or it could be in various drugs which inhibit the iodine, uptake, or the iodine uptake is inhibited, or the iodine metabolism is inhibited. Now we are not going to talk about this topic. This is exactly taught in medicine as an MCQ. So please remember, I have written medicine ka MCQ or pharmacology MCQ. What is a goitrogen? This is an important MCQ from this chapter. So please note what are the drugs that can produce hypothyroidism. Okay, now come to this point again and let us talk about diet. Now, if the diet or the water or the food is deficient in iodine, then remember, if the diet or the food is deficient in iodine, then remember it leads to a condition called as endemic goiter. It leads to a condition called as endemic goiter. Now, what is endemic goiter? Now, when I talk about what is endemic goiter, what is important in this endemic goiter story is that the endemic goiter means is defined as an area in the an geographical area which has greater than 5% of the population, 5% of the population who has a goiter. So please remember that. So what is this one? So endemic goiter, in which, please remember that, is something in which there is more than 5% of the population. Okay, so this is the important thing to remember. So have I made you understand up till this point?
Yes.
Hello? Okay, good. Now, what is important is the World Health Organization, and this is something that you are taught in community medicine, has come up by something called as the WHO grading of goiter. Now, this is again purely not for a clinical purpose. This is purely for a so-called community medicine or their surveillance programs, etc., to be known. Now, what is the WHO grading or the WHO classification of the goiter? WHO says that grade 1 goiters are those which are grade 1 goiters are those which are not visible. Grade 1 goiters are those which are not visible, not seen. And this is in an hyper extended neck. This is an MCQ point. So that means if you tell the patient to arch the neck backwards like this, you are liking to see the neck. So not visible, not seen. A grade 2 goiter is visible only on hyperextension. Okay. Last one, grade 3 is visible without hyperextension. Now, this is the grading of goiter. So have I made you understand up till this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So this is the important thing about WHO goiter. Now, there are a few books which have wrongly said these things as grade 1, not visible, not palpable. Grade 2, only palpable, not visible. Grade 3, both visible and palpable. But I do not think that is exactly a very, very good way of telling that. So the better point of this is you are required to know this part of something called as the WHO grading of a goiter. Now, what the WHO grading, and as I have said, the population, there are now few, particularly I have not read this exactly from the WHO site. I read it from a journal article. Now, it is said that this population prevalence stories are seen in population up to 12 years. That means if you go to a school, say for example in the Himalayas, and then you estimate how many children are there with a goiter and class, and 12 years means more or less this school boy will be in class 5 or class 6 maybe. So by this age, remember they are going to see into something called as an endemic goiter. Okay, so have you written up till this? Can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Good. So we are not going to talk about this. So this is the first group, is something called metabolic. Now, so this is the first one, is metabolic. And
So
remember
we take
that,
only the people who are less than 12 years of age for
yeah,
estimating.
less than 12 years of age, because this is, as I've said, from one publication. But there are others who do not mention the 12 years of age. Okay, there are publications which says that the group should be 6 to 12 years. But again, as I have said, I think it is better to confine it less than 12 years. Okay, right. Chalo. So this is the first etiological classification, or if you say pathology, I think it is better called etiopathological classification, is degenerative. Now, the second group, so after degenerative, we talk about is something called inflammatory. Is something called inflammatory causes of thyroid enlargement. Now, when you talk about inflammatory causes of thyroid enlargement, I will come back little down because I don't have space to write here. If you guys do have space, please continue. What are inflammatory causes of a thyroid enlargement? Now, inflammatory causes of thyroid enlargement could be grossly divided into two sides. One could be autoimmune, okay, in which we have two diseases, or technically one disease comes in both the spectrum, something called as Graves' disease, with which we are not going to talk today. We are only going to write. And another one is called as Hashimoto thyroiditis. Okay, so Hashimoto's thyroiditis. Whereas on the other side, we have something called inflammation called thyroiditis. The word itis means inflammation. So thyroiditis could again be classified as autoimmune, as I have said. Hashimoto's thyroiditis or thyroiditis could be Riedel's thyroiditis, or it could be acute bacterial thyroiditis, or finally subacute or viral cause of thyroiditis. So this completes the second part of the story also. Okay, right. So have you written up till this point?
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Okay, right. So this is what is important for you to remember. Okay, now, so this is something called thyroiditis, and we'll read about thyroiditis not now. After the benign diseases have ended, then we'll read about thyroiditis. So the second group of goiters is also complete. The third group of causes of goiter is neoplastic. Now, neoplastic, as you hope, will mean a tumor-like situation. Okay, so degenerative, inflammatory, neoplastic. So to make the story simple, this is what I have made, and I have tried to bring in many more difficult things under this single umbrella. Okay, so have I made you understand up till this?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So when it is neoplastic, again, as I've said, I will be going to an extreme depth about neoplasms of the thyroid gland, because neoplasms of thyroid gland are extremely important for not only an MBBS exam long case, but also umpteen number of MCQs also. Okay, now when you talk about neoplastic thyroid swellings, they are grossly divided according to the cell of origin. Please remember this, because this comes as a common short note. This comes as a very common Viva question. Not that great an MCQ, but this chapter on cancer thyroid is hot favorite for MCQ. Okay, now where was I? Right. So this is all about. So this is all about the first part is now on the cell of origin. We have three kinds of neoplasms. If it is arising from the follicular cell, then it is divided either as benign. Oh, sorry. Should have written it on that side. Extremely sorry. So it is either benign or malignant. Now, if it is benign, it is called as an adenoma. Whereas if it is malignant, it can be called as differentiated thyroid cancer, which is again of two types: papillary cancer thyroid and follicular cancer of the thyroid. What is important is, please draw a arrow like this and mention there is a spectrum of disease. Okay, so there is a spectrum of disease, and that becomes an important part. Now, the next point is, when you talk about undifferentiated thyroid cancer, and undifferentiated thyroid cancer, the only example is something called anaplastic thyroid cancer. Okay, so this comes as a short note in MBBS. Classify a thyroid cancer, or a part of a long question is very, very commonly asked in questions. So have you written up till this? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Right. So if you have written up till this, then the next part is, the next type of cells are something called as parafollicular cells. And the type of the cancer that comes out is always a malignant. And this kind of cell is usually medullary thyroid cancer. This completes this part. From the stroma, they can be benign or malignant. Now, when I talk benign, that will be example a fibroma, hemangioma, etc. On malignant, either it is a primary tumor, example lymphoma, or metastatic tumor from lung or breast. Have you written this definition or this classification?
স্যার স্যার ফলিকুলার সেলস এর আন্ডারে যে বিনাইনটা লিখেছি ওটা কি শুধু ফলিকুলার অ্যাডিনোমাই হয় না ডু উই হ্যাভ
Bus, only follicular adenoma. No other cells, sir. No other tumor. At least not for today. When I will be talking of something called cancers of the thyroid, there will be something called Hurthle cell neoplasms, and we'll be talking at that point. Not today. So this is, you are writing a note on classification of a goiter. I think you have already written 2 to 3 pages on this one, and this is enough for writing for a 5-mark short note. Have you completed? Can I proceed? Okay.
Sir, 30 seconds.
Okay, so we have completed up till this point.
Done, sir.
Done?
Yes,
Can I
sir.
proceed now?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you have done that, so the first topic is very important, and this was an important MBBS and an MCQ area about how to classify a goiter. The next point becomes something called as the clinical features of a goiter, and then we talk about the pathogenesis of nodule formation. So let us talk about the clinical features of a goiter. And this is something that I need to show you a video. So just I will be doing, I will be going out of my screen sharing for a minute only. Okay, just give me a minute, please. Right. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we start with now. The next of the common questions is, what are the clinical features of a goiter? Now, what are the clinical features of a goiter? Star, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Good. The clinical features of a goiter or any thyroid swelling. By this time, you know what is a goiter. Any thyroid swelling is called as a goiter. Now, any thyroid swelling has three characteristic features. Any thyroid swelling has three characteristic features. What are they? Number one, it is present in something called as the thyroid region of the neck. This is the first and the most important point. Number two, it moves upwards on deglutition. Deglutition means swallowing. Number three, the shape is a bilobed structure. So in a clinical examination, because your MBBS examinations particularly should be coordinated with your NEET and NEXT, and this is very important that you will be shown a video like this that you will be seeing. Can you see the video in your screens now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you see that the lady is swallowing? This gentleman and this lady is swallowing, and can you see that this swelling is moving upwards on deglutition? Have you appreciated this point?
Yes, sir.
That there is a swelling and this swelling is moving upwards on deglutition. Okay, so I have shown the video twice, thrice, how many times as required, but it is important for you to understand that why are we calling this to be a thyroid swelling. So I will show this so many times that you will come in your dreams now. Okay, so this is a swelling in the neck that is moving upwards on deglutition. Okay, now after you have known into this, let us understand again two important points for our description. It moves upwards on deglutition, is present in the thyroid region, and the shape of the swelling is a bilobe structure. Now,
Sir, even if
If
one
it
lobe
is-
undergoes swelling, then also it will look bilobe.
no. We are coming to that. Okay, just only one request. Please keep your questions, queries, comments for the end of the class or at the break. Okay, because we have to finish in time. Okay, so now the next point is how do or what is the thyroid region of the neck? Just give me a second. I will be not doing the screen sharing. Just give me a second to take out my slides. Ah. Just give me a second. Okay, so I hope all of you have seen the video on the movement with deglutition. Do I need to repeat the video once again? Hello? No.
No, sir.
Now there is something in your screens now. Can you see the picture?
Yes.
Good. So this picture is important because this is something that I wanted you to understand is something called as the thyroid region of the neck. Now, which part of the neck is called as the thyroid region? Understand the boundaries clinically. The superior boundary is the thyroid notch. The inferior boundary is the clavicle. I hope you can see the clavicle. The lateral boundary are the two sternomastoid muscles. So I will again repeat. What is the superior boundary? So the superior boundary is the notch, the superior boundary is the notch of the thyroid cartilage. So what is the superior boundary? So the superior boundary is the notch of the thyroid cartilage or the thyroid cartilage. What is the inferior boundary? You can see in the picture very closely. It's the clavicle. So if this is the clavicle, which is inferior boundary, what is this boundary? Sternocleidomastoid. Have you taken down this picture or have you made this picture in your copies? Hello.
Sir, 30 seconds.
Okay, take a screenshot if you like. Take a screenshot. So I will again repeat for everyone. What is the superior boundary? The superior boundary is notch of the thyroid cartilage. What is the inferior boundary? Is the clavicle. What is the lateral boundary? Is the sternocleidomastoid. This completes the boundary. Any swelling and any swelling in this region, please remember the first thought that you should have, any swelling in this region is the first clinical question is only one. Is this a thyroid swelling or not? Please understand the first question that we ask ourselves is any swelling in this region, is this a thyroid swelling or not? Okay. Have I made you understand up till this point?
Yes, sir.
Good. Can I proceed?
Yes, sir.
Good. If I can, then we have answered the question number 1. So that means this question is answered now. Question number 2 is very important for your exam purposes, not for an MCQ world. In an exam, I think all of you saw the video of the movement with deglutition. The question is, why does the thyroid move upward on deglutition? Deglutition means to swallow. Pani gulat lena, dhok gela. In Hindi and in Bengali, you call this to be. Now, what is the reason it moves upwards on deglutition? I do not know. In anatomy, you may have been taught the reasons. Can you know of any reason why does the thyroid move upwards on deglutition? In the video that I showed you.
Constrictors of
Constrictors
pharynx.
of
The
Very
thyropharynx.
good.
Thyroglossus muscle.
So good enough. It is very, thank you very much. Now, when you swallow, the reason number one, swallowing, I'm bad with spellings, will produce the water or the food to enter into the pharynx. We all know that. You say, yes, sir, we know that. Now, the pharynx contain 3 tubes. Remember that? What are those 3 tubes? The superior constrictor, the middle constrictor, and the inferior constrictor. So this is the superior. The food goes down from the superior to what? The middle constrictor. And from the middle constrictor, it goes down through what? Something called as the inferior constrictor muscle. So the food goes down from the pharynx from superior to the middle constrictor to the inferior constrictor. Now, inferior constrictor muscle, IC is inferior constrictor. Inferior constrictor muscle, please understand this picture. I try to draw very gross pictures. And understand this picture well. This tube that I have drawn behind is the pharynx. And this tube that I have drawn in front is the larynx. So if this is a tube that is pharynx and this is a tube that is larynx, then let me draw the muscles of the inferior constrictor. So if you have still not understood, those of you who have still not understood what the hell is going on, this is the superior constrictor. Okay. There is something called middle constrictor. Okay. And ultimately there is something called inferior constrictor, which as you see is attached to the thyroid cartilage. I've not made a very accurate diagram, but understand that the inferior constrictor muscles are known to have 2 parts. In ENT, they will teach you about this, and you are taught that there is an area in between. What is this area called as?
Illian's
Illian's
dehiscence.
Very good. Oh my God, everyone knows that. And it is through this dehiscence there is something called as?
Pouch of
Ventricus
Brocca.
diverticulum.
Okay, oh my God, everyone knows that. And then for good students, you are asked, what is Lyme's diverticulum? Okay, well, I will not be telling you this one today. But my concern is these muscles are thyropharyngeus. What is the name of the muscle? Thyropharyngeus. What do these thyropharyngeus get attached? The thyropharyngeus gets attached on the cartilage. So when the thyropharyngeus contracts, that means the logic is when the thyropharyngeus contracts, when the thyropharyngeus, am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when the thyropharyngeus contracts, the thyroid cartilage moves upward. And when it moves upwards, it pulls upward the trachea and the thyroid gland is attached to the trachea. So this is the explanation. If you have taken down this note, I hope making this simple arrow diagram will be helpful. to tell to the examiner or write in an examination, because some colleges give an question about 3 marks question. Why does the thyroid move upward on deglutition? So probably making a simple picture like this, probably making this single arrow diagrams helps. So can I proceed now? Hello?
Yes, sir.
The reason
Yes, sir.
number 2 is
30
that
seconds, please.
the reason number 2 is there is the thyroid is a content of the pretracheal fascia. That means the thyroid gland, the larynx, the thyroid gland, the larynx, the cricoid, all are a content of the pretracheal fascial envelope, or technically called as the pretracheal or prelaryngeal space. Hence, if the trachea moves, definitely everything is
Sir,
contained
can you
in
repeat number 2?
the pretracheal fascia contains thyroid, larynx, cricoid. The pretracheal or the prelaryngeal space, remember, contains the thyroid gland. I think you can see the picture, and is the content of something called as the thyroid space. Okay, so this is the most important point after thyropharyngeus. The third point is something called ligament of
Ligament of
Berry, which I have already taught in the first class, connects which part of the thyroid lobe to the trachea. Where do
Tubercle
you
of
get
Zuckerman.
that? That means the answer is posteromedial part of the lobe to join to the trachea. Remember, the tubercle of Zuckerkandl is a landmark for which nerve?
Recurrent
recurrent laryngeal nerve.
The recurrent laryngeal nerve. Very good. This is a common MCQ point. Tubercle of Zuckerkandl is a landmark for a recurrent laryngeal nerve. So this is all about the thyroid. Why does it move upwards on deglutition? Please do not say it moves upwards and downwards on deglutition. It doesn't move downward. It moves upwards because the muscle contracts. It does not move downward because the muscle relaxes and the thyroid and the larynx comes in a normal place. So this is why the thyroid moves upwards on deglutition. Have you written all the 3 points? 1, 2, 3.
Yes, sir.
So can you please repeat the
Yes,
second
sir.
point?
The second point is that the thyroid is a content of the pretracheal fascia, which contains the thyroid gland, the larynx, the cricoid, and so this is the pretracheal or the laryngeal space. Okay, so this
Thanks, sir.
completes your description about a very important question around why is this a
Sir,
thyroid swelling.
below Zenker's diverticulum, what is that written?
Lymar's diverticulum. I did not say what is a Lymar's diverticulum. I asked you what is the Lymar's diverticulum. I will not be giving the answer today. Well, we will be talking about head neck surgery. Then I will be teaching you what is a Jenker's diverticulum. Then we'll be talking other diverticulars around this area. So this is the first point about the clinics part that completes. Now, the next part of this, before we take a break, Shamalda kokhon break hobe bole dio, is something called nodule formation in a thyroid gland. Nodule formation in, oh, very sorry, extremely sorry. Before I go to nodule formation, extremely sorry on that point. I really forgot a very important point. Now, What are the other swellings which move upwards on deglutition? I was really very sorry, I was forgetting this question. What are the other swellings that moves upwards on deglutition? You have seen the video. I think I do not need to show you the video once again. Remember that all the swellings that move upwards on deglutition, there is a simple rule. What is the rule? Please write that rule. You may write Ramanuj's rule also, whatever can be the rule. The rule is that anything in the midline of the neck, a midline neck swelling that moves with deglutition is a thyroid swelling until and unless proved otherwise. That means the law is very simple. If there is anything in this region that is moving upwards on deglutition, whatever can be the pathology, your number one cause of a swelling that moves upwards on deglutition is a thyroid gland. Have I made you understand this point?
Yes, sir.
Good. If you have understood this point, that means there are other causes, other swellings that moves upwards on deglutition. The other swellings that moves upwards on deglutition will include a thyroglossal cyst. I will ask you, why does it move upwards on deglutition? The cause number 3 will be a pretracheal lymph node. LN is a lymph node. A pre-laryngeal oblique precricoid lymph node. What is the other MCQ name for a precricoid lymph node?
Delphian lymph node.
The meaning of the word Delphian is unknown. Comes from the Greek island of Delphi. Belly love is unknown lymph node, but we know the reason now. But this is called as Delphian. So in your MCQ world, please remember this. Number 5th is something called as a laryngocele. Okay. So please remember, 6th one will be a subhyoid bursa enlargement. So how many causes did I tell you? Or what are the other swellings in the neck that moves upwards on deglutition? Remember 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, of which which is the most important cause? Obviously, without saying, is the thyroid. Next point to remember is cause number 3, 4, 5, 6. This box that you have made, the movement on deglutition is because of their content in the pretracheal fascia. They move because they are a content of the pretracheal fascia. They move because they are a content of the pretracheal fascia. When we talk about thyroglossal cyst, why does a thyroglossal cyst move upwards on deglutition? Why does a thyroid? Very good.
Persistence
You
of
have
thyroid ligament.
very good. Very good. Not protrusion of tongue, sir. We have asked you a very simple question. Why does a thyroglossal cyst move upwards on deglutition? not protrusion of tongue.
On deglutition,
Very
the
good.
tongue reaches the roof of
What
the
movement?
palate.
The tongue moves
The
upwards.
single line answer
Upward
is
Upward.
tongue moves upwards. What is the phenomenon that I told you in the last class?
The
The
pendulum effect.
thyroglossal
Pendulum.
tract is attached like a pendulum to the tongue. This is the reason it moves upwards on deglutition. And also, this is the only swelling in the whole group that moves upwards again on protrusion of tongue. So this is that swelling out of the 6 which only moves with protrusion of tongue. Have you completed up till this?
So what is that? Tongue moves upwards, arrow mark, then what is written there?
Thyroglossal tract.
Oh.
This was from the last class. And then, as I've said, it looks like a pendulum, it moves. So this completes a very important clinical question. This is very commonly asked in Viva. I will write most important. You can use a yellow marker pen, red marker pen, whatever you do like. This is what is important to remember. Why does the thyroid move upwards on deglutition? Okay, Shamalda kokon break hobe bole dio. After this, then the next topic that we will start is something called nodule formation.
At 7 p.m. দিয়েন
7 p.m. হয়ে যাবে. Nodule formation in thyroid. Now, please write the notes well. In the break, if you have any doubts, we'll discuss about that. Now, what are nodule formations in thyroid? What are those things that you may have been taught in pathology? You may not have been taught in pathology. Remember that what I will like to do is that we will do a pathology or the pathophysiology, and then what we are going to see about is the gross morphology, and along with the gross morphology, the most important part is something that we are going to read is the clinical correlation. So maintain the algorithm very well. Then at the end of the algorithm, you will yourself understand why does the clinical correlation need to be understood with the pathology. So your classes in pathology should always be maybe with medicine, surgery, gynecology, so that rather than writing or reading about blunt and boring histopathology, it is good always to know about what is the gross thing that happens in a real life human being. So we'll start with a normal thyroid gland. Now, in a normal thyroid gland, what is important is the normal thyroid gland is responsible for secretion of T3, T4, and remember, is under the effect of something called TSH, which acts on the normal thyroid gland. And what the TSH does is, the TSH is always a teacher and the thyroid is the student. When it tells the thyroid to study, the T3 and T4 are the examination marks, the results that the thyroid gland or the student produces. I hope this is very simply understood. So what I will do is that for all of you, I will remove the teacher from this point. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to remove the teacher to this point, and this is the teacher. The teacher is smiling at you. This is the pituitary gland. What is the teacher hormone called as? TSH. Please remember the name. I know all of you know this from class 5. Now, there is an important inhibition or a feedback mechanism that you should know. When the students are reading well or are getting good marks, does the teacher teach again? The answer is no. So if T3, T4 increases, what happens to this effect? Hello? This is something called as a negative feedback. Okay, so that means this is something very basic and fundamental to our understanding from a very basic biology class. However, there is a headmaster in the school. Okay, who is the headmaster? Very good. So this is the hypothalamus, H for H. Hypothalamus secretes something called as a TRH, which, however, the students, not the teacher, cannot go to the hypothalamus and say that you are not going to secrete less amount of TRH. So this is a one-way process. A student does not go to the principal, okay, and says that, sir, well, we do not like the class. This is a one-way phenomenon. So if you have remembered up till this, then an important change starts happening. When there is any decrease, or when there is any decrease in T3 or T4 levels in the blood. Now, when I say decrease, remember the word decrease could be either an absolute decrease. Absolute means, the best example of an absolute is iodine deficiency. The best example is iodine deficiency. When there is iodine deficiency, you do not get raw materials to produce that, okay? Or it could be a relative deficiency. Example, say for example, in the IPL times, what happens to the demand for television sets in the locality? There is a huge demand. Now that means the manufacturing company is making televisions or monitors or whatever you call that to be, but the demand for that is transiently increased, and that time the supply that is coming for televisions is looking like there is a relative low circulation. It is not that it is low, but the problem is that the demand is very high. So have I made you understand up till this point? Hello?
Yes.
Good. If you have understood up till this point, then basic knowledge in pathology, how will the thyroid gland respond to this? The thyroid gland undergoes something called as hypertrophy. I know that you know what is a hypertrophy. The best example of hypertrophy may be going to the gym and the biceps are again, wow man, great biceps. That is hypertrophy. So what happens to that important thing in the thyroid gland? The size is increased. So that means, tell me, what is the clinical correlation of a thyroid gland that undergoes a hypertrophy? What is the clinical correlation?
Swelling.
The size is increased, and hence you diagnose a goiter. What is the surface of the swelling?
Smooth.
Smooth. What is the thyroid status of this patient?
Euthyroid.
Very good. The thyroid status of the patient is he or she is euthyroid, because it increased in size to produce what? To produce T3, T4. So whatever was the deficiency in T3, T4 is made up by the production. So there is a balance between T3, T4 and TSH, and the patient is euthyroid. And please remember, this is a reversible phenomenon. Sorry, I should have made the arrow on the other way. This is a reversible phenomenon. That means if the iodine deficiency is corrected iodine deficiency, then the gland is going to come back to normal. Or the best example of this is something called as a physiological goiter. Have I made you understand up till this part? In physiological goiter, when pregnancy is completed or adolescence is completed, the demand is again not there after the IPL season. There is no more demand for televisions or extra demand for televisions. The demand comes back to the normal equilibrium. So the gland then again comes back to the normal shape and size. So the clinical correlation is this. Have you understood up till this point?
Yes,
Hello? Good.
Yes, sir.
So if you have
Sir, can you
understood up
please
till
repeat
this,
the last part?
the hypertrophy of the gland occurs because it has to make more hormones. So what happens is it increases in size, the number of cells do not increase. So if you think over what is the pathological correlation or what is the pathology that looks like? Looks like that the follicles that were there looks like normal follicles. If you have been taught in pathology, these are thyroid cells. Okay. So this is what it looks like. This is what is a normal appearance. And when the demand has again decreased, say for example, it was a physiological goiter and the demand came down, pregnancy got complete, that's it. So you don't need more T3, T4. So what will happen to the TSH? TSH says, okay, man, you don't need that T3, T4. Okay. So everything comes down to normal and the goiter goes away. This is a physiological cause and it is hypertrophied. Have I made you understand up till this point? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Good. If you have understood up till this point, the next point is the stimulus continues. The stimulus continues. The stimulus means the demand for T3, T4 goes on. It could be a dietary deficiency, it could be other causes, does not matter. The stimulus continues, the stimulus continues. And then what happens is the TSH levels are persistently high because, as I've said, the stimulus continues. This produces both hypertrophy and hyperplasia. Now, what is the basic difference between these two? Hypertrophy means the gland is increasing in size. What is hyperplasia? What is increasing in size?
Number of the cells.
Number of the cells. Now, I will ask you a very basic difference in pathology. An adult thyroid gland which has completed its development, except for a neoplasm, which that means a cancer, how can the number of cells increase, sir? It cannot increase until and unless, but what can increase is in hyperplasia, what can increase? What can increase is in between, to increase the work of production, what is getting increased in between the thyroid follicles as the increased work of production is going on?
Blood vessels.
No,
Blood vessels.
absolutely not. Are blood vessels. That means more is the blood supply. They're telling the gland, okay, guys, work more. And to support the blood vessel, what is the material that is getting deposited?
Collagen.
Very good. Is collagen or technically
Fibrosis.
enough fibrocytes, or you get fibrocytes, technically enough fibrous tissue? What does this blue and the red indicate? Increased vascularity. And the cells decide that let us come together, let us merge together. And when you come together and let us merge together, then let us make a common follicle. Now, now we do not need other follicles. Let us come together and then let us eat together and then let us come together. And when we come together, we have all the colloid, as you can see in the picture, all the colloid which is getting accumulated together. So did you understand the picture or the pathology? Hello?
Yes,
Sir,
sir.
so if the
Right.
number of cells are not increasing
Right,
in the
but-
thyroid, why we are saying that it's hyperplasia?
Well, because the number of cells now will, because see, this is an adult gland that has a fixed number of cells. So if you think over that, does the number of cells increase? Yes, maybe in a long run, maybe, because the persistent stimulus, particularly by TSH, you will learn about this very quickly, about the number of cells increasing. You will learn about this very quickly when you come to this nodule. What is this nodule and why does this number of cells, why does this Dillmann-Moore phenomenon happen in the thyroid very quickly? But till now, have I made you understand? Because we are going to take a break now, it is 7:01. Okay, have you understood up till this point? There is a common conglomeration of a follicle, and when there is a common conglomeration of a follicle, this material is called as a colloid.
But
that means what is important is the surface of the gland is smooth. There will be in or more or less marginal increase in vascularity. It has to be, because until and unless it is so vascular, why will it be like this? What is the clinical perspective of this patient? Tell that to me, and then we take a break within few seconds. What is the clinical correlation in this patient? Tell that to me. Which part of the thyroid gland is
Swelling, sir.
enlarged? Which part of the thyroid gland is enlarged? Sir, both the parts, both the lobes,
Both the gland.
equally both the lobes. And if the thyroid gland is enlarged, what is the surface of the thyroid gland?
irregular.
No, absolutely not. Why should it
Smooth.
be irregular? Because remember, the number of cells did not increase. It was increased only with the vascularity in the parenchyma. So the surface will still be smooth. Understand that. What about the vascularity? The vascularity is a marginal increase, not that great. Okay. What about the temperature of the thyroid? Normal, man. Why should it be abnormal? It is normal. What is the function of the thyroid? What do you think is the function of the thyroid? Hello, what do you think is the function of the thyroid?
Increase.
Is euthyroid, or in an extreme case, maybe hypothyroid. This condition is clinically called as diffuse, non-toxic goiter. Have I made you understand up till this point?
স্যার লাস্ট পার্টটা ক্লিনিক্যাল ফিচার্স গুলো আবার রিপিট করবেন
Surface is smooth, vascularity is marginally increased, temperature is normal, function wise it is euthyroid or hypothyroid, and as I have said, the consistency, I should have said that, is firm, FIRM. So it becomes technically into a diffuse non-toxic goiter. Diffuse because both the lobes are enlarged, non-toxic because thyroid functions are normal, commonly called in pathology as colloid goiter. Were you taught this in pathology?
ইয়েস স্যার
Hello.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So did they teach you like this?
নো স্যার
No,
No. Okay. They should have taught like this. My job becomes easier. So
Sir,
I
can you
hope
please repeat the part colloid?
so. In pathology, what is this disease clinically called as? What is the name of this disease clinically?
Colloid
Colloid
goiter.
No. Diffuse
Diffuse non-toxic goiter.
Okay.
What is the common name for this disease?
Benign
No.
Simple goiter.
Very good. The common name for this disease
Plastic
is
goiter.
a simple goiter. If you can call hyperplastic goiter, okay, but this is not a very used term now. Believe me, the commonest thing that we all use is colloid goiter. Have you understood up till this point till now? Hello?
Yes,
Take a
sir.
break for 5 minutes.
Sir,
Okay,
so
okay,
what
okay.
is the
Please
To
take a
increase
break now.
vascularity.
It is
what is
7:05. We come back by 7:10. Take a break now. 7:05. Take a break now.